Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sasha and today I am going to be doing, hopefully quickly, my February reading wrap up of all of the books I was able to read last month. I had some big intentions with February since it was Valentine's Day. I was hoping to be able to read a lot of my NetGalley arcs that were romance, either contemporary romance, fantasy romance, supernatural romance, paranormal romance. I was just anticipating reading all of my review copies of romances. That didn't quite happen, and let me tell you why by telling you what I ended up reading first in the month of February. So I had started the Infernal Devices series, which you can see over my shoulder, by Cassandra Clare in the month of January. I was super close to finishing the second book in that series, but didn't end up finishing until February, and then went straight into book number 3. The Infernal Devices, for those of you who, like me, have been living under a rock and have never read it before, it's a young adult fantasy series following 3 main characters. 2 of those characters are shadow hunters, which means they have angel blood in them, and they hunt demons, which include vampires, werewolves, ghosts, magicians, wizards, warlocks, all the things we love to read about in fantasy novels. I will say that this series deals with a love triangle in the best way I've ever seen it written about. I normally hate love triangles. Why choose just one? You know what I mean? I hate them, and I have hated them since I started reading young adult as a teenager. I continue to hate them as a full adult now. This series did the love triangle chef's kiss the most beautiful way ever, to the point that when I was reading that third book, there were multiple times throughout that book where I was sobbing so hard I couldn't see through my tears to see the words on the page. So to this day, I'm still not totally sure what I read, but from what I could see, it broke my heart into a million trillion pieces. And I'll be totally honest, I went into a bit of a dark place after finishing that book. The only saving grace is that I posted my review on my Instagram and my blog and on Goodreads. And my Instagram post had such a big response. I was not expecting it. I didn't know. I just been living under a rock. I knew that Cassandra Clare was a really prolific and beloved author in the space, but I had no idea what a following she had. And the people who were coming out of my own personal life to message me and be like, you just finished this book, this is my favorite series, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, holy crap. So it really helped to be able to talk to people I'd never met before who were like, oh, it wrecked you? Same. And then talk to my actual real life friends as well who were like, yeah, man, I don't remember the ending at all, or like my tears mark that book and now I can't even read some of the words. It was just a really amazing moment in the community, and leave a comment down below if you've read that series. I do have plans to now read everything else Cassandra Clare has ever written. I just need to do it in very small doses because I cannot be mentally spiraling for most of the year while I try and read all of her books. So I had not anticipated getting so wrecked by Infernal Devices, which is why I couldn't go into any books purposefully for review or ARC copies, because I just was not in the headspace to leave an appropriate review. So what I did instead was Pharaoh Feb, which is Fantasy Romance February on Instagram, had an amazing sale and giveaway with over 200 different fantasy romance authors, where I think it was either the day before Valentine's Day or a few days before, they did a sale on books. And I went in and I scoured through and found some things that sounded really exciting. And a lot of these authors are either self-produced, self-publications or indie authors, and I went ahead and got their books on Kindle. And in addition to all of my ARC copies that I want to read for NetGalley, as well as getting back on Readsy Discovery in the upcoming months, I definitely wanted to give some of these books some pages read, because authors can typically get paid by the page you read when it comes to sort of like Kindle Unlimited and books like that. And then I also wanted to start leaving reviews on some of these books that had less than 200 reviews or less than 1,000 reviews. So after finishing Clockwork Princess, I read A Wolf's Desire by, I might pronounce the name wrong, Asa Maria Bradley. This was a very short story that was sort of a prequel to the entire series. It was a great way to discover, would I like this author's writing? Do I like the direction this is going in? It followed a billionaire sort of Omega Wolf who the other alphas in the area were trying to get on their team, essentially, or to join their pack. And then one of them steals and kidnaps the girl he's interested in, and it's him saving her within I think it was less than 30 pages. And there was some good suspense, there was some good spice, and it was definitely a really great way to know, do I want to continue with this author in the future? The next book I read was book number 1 in a series called Arians from Arians. It was called Ares from the Guardians of Hades series by Felicity Heaton. Wow, I need a drink. Talking is hard. This book went above and beyond my expectations. It was, again, a supernatural fantasy romance. This one definitely is more for an adult audience. What I found really exciting, I love reading about Hades and Persephone in any iteration, in any world. Throw them in, and I'm typically really happy with it as long as I enjoy the writing and the world building. This follows Hades and Persephone's sons, who are all named after other gods or important people of Olympus. And so the first book opens with Ares, but we do get a chance to meet all the other sons, as well as there were a few scenes with those other individual brothers, which I was not expecting. But the way that this novel is written really sets up this story to be unleashed, with each book being a new brother as the main focus. So in this first novel, Ares meets a demon while trying to save a woman. The demon somehow miraculously steals his power, but not his innate strength as a son of a god. And then it's him, his brothers, and this girl who happens to have powers of her own, trying to get his powers back while also protecting the gate of Hades that is in New York. So there are all different gates, and all the brothers have to protect them. That is sort of their duty here on Earth. And the chemistry between the two characters was really exciting. It was a forced proximity. It was definitely a very jealous alpha male energy, but in a way that wasn't gross and creepy. It worked because he had so much just testosterone from being the god Ares personified. Wow, my brain's going so fast that I can't get the words out. So yeah, if there was a guy on the street who had the same possessive qualities as Ares, I would be like, ew, creepy. But in this book, it really worked well. And there were some definitely fun scenes that have stuck in my brain since finishing this book. And I do see myself in the future picking up the other ones to try and read more about the other brothers. I think when I checked, there are 9 books so far, and the last 2 that were written is of Hades and then of Persephone, so I definitely want to get to those as well. And there seems to be a lot of things brewing in this world that's going to cause a lot of problems between the gods and the demons and the humans. So I'm super excited to continue and to see what happens next. After Ares, I wasn't ready to commit to another full-length novel, so I read something quite short. It was about 140 pages. It's called Crying Wolf by Rochelle Page. This book was just what I needed to sort of as a bridge between this one full-length novel and the next full-length novel. but I don't know that I would continue reading from this author for one main reason, which I'll talk about in just a second. The main premise of this novel is that there is a young woman in her early 20s who is in an abusive relationship with a man who, as a profession, just so happens to be a cop. It discusses how she has a really hard time getting away from him because of this, because everyone in the town sort of looks up to him, and the way she's finally able to escape, she ends up landing, unbeknownst to her, in a territory of werewolves. And as soon as she comes into town, the alpha scents her and realizes she's his mate. So of course the pack is then sworn to protect her no matter what happens next, but she won't tell them what she's running from. So we're sort of watching this dynamic form between a human woman who doesn't know about werewolves and a pack of werewolves trying to protect her in a very small story. Because again, it's 140 pages, so we move really quickly from the beginning, the middle, and the end. I will say it is a happily ever after, even though there is a bit of a dramatic climax that happens. And overall, there are some pretty big trigger warnings to go with this book. The thing that I didn't love about it was the vulgarity of the language used, and I kind of just dismissed it as like, oh well, if he's thinking more of as an animal, if he's using an animal brain and not a human brain, I guess I can dismiss this language and the way he sort of talks to her. But I don't know that that is something I love in my own werewolf novels that I'm reading. So I don't know that I would continue with this author, but it was a good, quick werewolf pack protect mentality, and that is something I do really enjoy. So I had a good time, but not a great time. Next, we're back with my girl, Katie Robert. Listen, I was so excited for her next novel to come out. This one is called Radiant Sin. It's book number 4 in the Dark Olympus series. We're bringing it back full circle to the gods and Olympus, and I am all here for it. The very cool thing that Katie Robert does with her books is that her gods and goddesses don't have any supernatural powers. The only sort of power they have is that they're elite, they're wealthy, and they are sort of seen as the upper echelon of society. So they hold really important roles as CEOs, as politicians, as the rule makers. They're at the top of the pyramid. And someone new has come into town from book 3 that is now trying to dismantle everything they've ever built. And our main characters in this story are Apollo and his assistant Cassandra, and they are invited to a week-long party at this new person's house. And right away, as soon as we got the invitation, I was like, murder mystery. That's what's gonna go down, that's what's gonna happen, and essentially that kind of is what happened. And it was really interesting to watch which other members of the super elite were invited, because not everyone was. We had seen some development between allies in the novels previously, and it was again really interesting to see how some of these characters evolved, or how their lies started to unravel. Not to mention the entire tropes of the novel that included fake boyfriend, fake dating, forced proximity, sharing one bed, and then both of them sort of being in the long end game. Both of these characters had been obsessed with each other for years, and finally they were getting their chance to sort of let all of their passions come out during this little week extended con that they were on, recon, because they were there working for Zeus to try and get more information. It was my favorite story, I think, and favorite coupling other than Hades and Persephone in book number 1. So I was really happy to read this one. I really liked where the story's progressing. I can't wait to see what's going to happen for the rest of this series, because it's really all up in the air. The next book, I should mention before I move on, Radiant Sin I got from Hoopla, from my library. Thank you, library. The next book I also got on Hoopla from my library when I was looking for Radiant Sin. It's called The Blacksmith Queen by G.A. Aiken. I did not finish this novel, and I am a little bit disappointed, honestly. I think I got 5-ish chapters in before I just had to call it quits. Right off the bat, this novel, it does suck you in with the prologue in the first chapter. I was really intrigued about what was going to continue to happen as the story progressed. I thought the writing in that way created a lot of really good suspense. It was incredibly gory to the point where I felt nauseous at points reading it. But then, once we started to meet the characters and they started to actually talk and intermingle and talk to each other, the inner monologues and the dialogue were so very juvenile. And it felt like teenagers, almost, or like tweens talking to each other with the word choices and the phrasing. And it was just so weird because all of these characters were adults, except for one who was like appropriately responding. So it didn't make any sense that we had like literal depictions of someone's brains being smashed out of their skull, but then the next moment have a really juvenile conversation about something else. So I couldn't get past that weird juxtaposition. It was very strange for me. I either need you to be like all juvenile and goofy, or I need you to be all murderous and gory with some sass. Like, sass is fine, but let's not pretend that we have like a child brain while murdering people like that. I don't know. It was just really strange. So I did not finish that one, but I wanted to mention it in case any of you were curious. Maybe that is something you would like. There you go. The last book on my list I finished March 1st, but I'm going to count it in February since February is such a short month. So I read Of the Blood by Cameo Renee. This was one of my Feb books that I got for free on Kindle. And so I'll go back and mention which other ones were also from there. This was a story about vampires, and I thought this was going to be a little bit different than it turned out to be. I did have a good time. The beginning was very rushed and chaotic and a little confusing because I didn't understand the time period we were in based on some of the setting clues, and also the main characters as we met them were supposed to have instant chemistry and instantly be like head over heels for each other, and I was like, I don't even know their names right now. Like, I don't know what's happening. So that threw me off, and I was really hoping that the series would build and grab and give us more tension between characters and build on the plot, which it eventually did. I would say the middle of this book is probably the strongest it got, where we had a defined, like, evil bad guy. We started to have some romantic feelings that made sense towards another character. And then we had the female main character sort of coming into her own power and understanding herself and standing up for herself. So all of that was like building a really nice story. It lost me a little bit again towards the end because it felt like instead of organically weaving in new characters that we would rely on in future novels, it felt like they were all just like chucked onto the table and we were expected to understand that they all were indebted to our main character. So it didn't feel as organic, and like by happenstance we're meeting this person right now. It was like, I am so indebted to you, I'll do anything for you, call me if you ever need me. And it was a repetition of that until the novel ended, and it was like, so in the future novels there will be something bad that happens where she's going to call on all of these different factions of people within the magical world who will come to her aid and help her. Okay, I see what you're doing, which is not what I want. I don't want to know what's coming next, but now I kind of do. So I had a good time with that story. I think it has a lot of potential and just needs a little bit more polishing and editing as it moves forward. I think that is all for this month's wrap up and review. I quickly wanted to go over which books I got for free on Kindle before I forget. A Wolf's Desire, Aries, Crying Wolf, and Of the Blood. Those were some of those books I got during that Valentine's sale that was on Instagram. I sort of make sure that I say that in my Instagram posts or in my blog posts. As always, my reviews go up to Goodreads first before they go onto my blog or onto Instagram. If you have any questions about anything I read this month or what I'll be reading next month, aka now, you can leave me a comment below. Let's chat about some books. I'm hoping to get back into NetGalley. I'm already halfway through a NetGalley arc for March, so that feels good to be able to check another one off. I want to check at least 3 off in March. We'll see what's going to happen because I have a busy month, but thank you all so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!